Yeah. Oh well. It's all good. It's all good.
Would have been cool.
Yeah, it would have been.
But all good. Happy
Let's say 6th.
July 6th, man. America, another year older.
Yep.
We're back. We got some cool stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about some mobility stuff today, which is obviously pretty relevant in what we do, and goes a long way in just helping your body feel better. And there's a lot of different types of mobility, a lot of different ways to do it. So we're going to kind of go over some of that stuff, things that have worked for us and things that we've seen work in the past. So just starting off with, I guess let's start here. Do you have like a mobility routine that you do yourself?
No, not necessarily. At times, I'll throw it in my workout.
Okay.
So there's certain mobility things I will do, yeah, literally like as a superset or part of my workout. But for the most part, not always.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain. What we'll get to as far as like full range of motion lifting, I feel like checks a lot of my boxes.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, man, for the past couple of years, I don't really know how long, but I've been doing kind of like we talked about this earlier. Just kind of like I'd say 4 or 5 days out of the week before bed, I have like a small little, takes me 5 minutes,
Yeah.
of just like, I don't know, 6 to 8 different stretches or movements that just help me feel good, you know what I mean? Or help my body feel good. Especially after like a long run or like a harder lift day. It's like, yeah, like I notice a big difference if I do it, really if I don't do it. If I miss it, when I wake up the next day, I'm a lot more stiff and usually a little bit more sore. Maybe that's just in my head. But regardless, I think having something like that, and we probably talk about this later too, but having something like that where you have a consistent mobility routine where you build up, 5 to 10 different exercises or movements that feel good for your body, man, I think goes a long way. But I think the reason that, we had this idea is you recently did, I don't know what it was, if you want to explain it.
I think they called it a workshop.
Okay, like a mobility workshop. And
Yeah. Yeah, it was at the Fight Lab or Lee Brothers MMA here in Fort Wayne. I think it was titled like Flexibility and Stretching Workshop, which wasn't my title.
Yeah.
But it was funny because I really didn't talk a ton about stretching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was just a connection, a way to collaborate between where I work, PSM, and the Fight Lab, which is like down the street.
Yeah.
So went there, did a workshop for like an hour. It was good. It was good. It was a good turnout. I really wasn't sure how many people.
Looked like there was a decent amount of people there.
Yeah, there's probably 20-some people. Some old face, like, oh, sure, I remember you. Aaron Hunter was there.
Okay.
Savannah's brother was there.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's like, oh, this is cool, like, little turnout.
Yeah.
One of the fighters, a lot of the other fighters were doing, like, sparring rounds, so it's like, But, no, it was good. It was a good turnout.
So what was the, like, format? Like, did you have, like, an hour kind of, not presentation, but did you have it planned out of what you wanted to talk about, or were people asking questions, or how did you go about like teaching that stuff? Yeah.
So teaching the practicum to strength conditioning at Indiana Tech, we already have like a mobility stretching day.
Okay.
So it's like Lee Brothers, they wanted an hour. Cool. I'm used to having to do it for an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, this is kind of easy to talk about. So it was basically me going through stuff, and then I gave time for questions at the end.
Okay.
The one thing, and maybe we've talked about it, maybe we haven't, where I think I kind of wasn't prepared for, is I'm talking to them like I'm teaching them how to do mobility. I'm teaching them like why it's important to do these things, how to increase range of motion, how to solidify range of motion. I'm not using like fancy science terms. I'm showing demonstrations with other people. It's like clear improvements with, minimal time. And then I talked to him for a minute, then we got on the floor, we partnered up, did some stretching, then did isometrics in end range of motion. And then we did that for hamstring. We did it for hip, like 90-90 position. And then I'm like, but you guys are here, like, you want to improve range of motion, you want to improve flexibility. What other, because we're just talking, I'm just going over concepts at the moment. Like, how can I apply it to what you guys want to improve? And then it's like, well, I got low back pain. Like, I'm like, oh, you guys want me to, like, fix your pain. Like, oh, yeah, my traps whenever I'm doing. And it's like, okay, like, I wasn't prepared for this. So that was kind of but it was fine other than that.
Yeah. I find that a lot of people, at least a lot of the kids that I work with, they make a connection between if something hurts, they want to stretch for it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like, it's like, you know, we have a lot of kids that will have like jumper's knee, right? Like good common example of like, yeah, you know, the front of my knee hurts right in here. Like, how can I stretch it out? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, depending on what it is, if it really is like tendonitis in the patella tendon, then can't really stretch that out. You know, like stretching is more for like tight muscles or, you know, sore muscles if they're sore and tight because you worked out hard. Yeah, I can give you some stretches for that. But a lot of times it's like, like my shoulder's been hurting me ever since we bench pressed 2 weeks ago. Like, how can I stretch it out? And it's like, it's not really the best way to go about it, you know? So I could definitely see that happening where it's like, oh, mobility, I think a lot of people think that if they have pain in a certain area, it has to be a mobility issue, which it might.
Could be.
But there's also a lot of other, obviously, variables that go into that. So it's just, it's funny you say that because we see that a lot where it's like, yeah, I got something going on. Or how do I hear it all the time, like with lower back, like you said, like, how do I stretch out my lower back? And it's like, I mean, I can give you a couple like movements that might help. That's why I always tell them, like, no guarantee. Sometimes this helps people, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, it's an interesting concept that a lot of people, you know, correlate or connect pain with, oh, I just need to stretch it out, you know.
But like stretching, typically if I got sore, anything, muscle, tendon, whatever, stretching does feel good.
Yeah.
Stretching is like, I mean, you understand, like, that's parasympathetic. It is relaxing. It does help with muscle tone, like something that's really tensed up. It helps it to relax in the short term.
Yeah.
But does it fix your low back problem? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
Does it fix your tendon? Like you said, it's kind of hard to stretch that out. Do you follow Jake Tura on Instagram?
No, I don't think so.
He might go Jacked Athlete Podcast. Maybe that's like the title of his Instagram or something.
Okay.
But he's I don't know, I forget his whole backstory, but strength coach that is like all in on learning about tendons and like tendonitis or tendinopathies, mainly the knee, but also the Achilles for the most part.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
And he's just over in Ohio, actually. I think, or at least he used to be. But he puts out like a lot of easy to process information about it. He'll read the research and then make memes to explain it, which like it's right up my alley.
Yeah,
makes it easy. But basically, to stretch out the tendon needs like a ton of load in order to get it to. I think it was to stretch it like 4%. You need some X amount of force.
Yeah.
So it's like the best way to get a tendon to actually stretch is through lifting heavy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And there's a lot of Dr. Keith Barr, Ebony Rio, lots of research on tendinopathy and getting rid of tendon pain and lifting heavy or doing like slow eccentrics or isometrics. You just hold the position. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that, especially with, you know, just talking off the top of my head, like tendons are obviously built to handle a lot of force, you know what I mean? So it's probably, you probably need a lot of force to actually stretch out that part of the whatever you're trying to stretch, you know? But that is interesting. Going into just kind of like breaking down, you know, there's a lot of different types of stretching and mobility work we can do. So like most common is dynamic and static stretching, right? So dynamic is just something where you're active, where you're moving through the stretch, right? Is that fair?
Yep.
So think of like a reverse toe touch, or like a like into like a deep lunge, right? And step back, or even like something as simple as like deep squats, like working into a deep squat, like A skips. I mean, I would consider that like, that's obviously dynamic. And static on the other end is where you're holding a stretch, right? So your traditional type of stretching where you're touching your toes and just holding it, right? So I think it's fair to say that it's common knowledge at this point that like do dynamic stretching before a workout or competition, static stretching afterwards, right? That's not anything groundbreaking. I think that's been established for a while now. It is crazy thinking about it because like working in a high school, I go to all the football games, and like there are still a lot of teams that will like static stretch like before the game.
Yeah.
Like get in a circle and like tuck and touch your toe, and it's just like, yeah, where did we go wrong? Like what's going on? Maybe it's because they don't have someone that is, like qualified to or has experience in actually doing it the right way.
Yeah.
But we do see that a lot. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything on that or.
No, I didn't. Like when I was at Arizona State, there was a big conditioning day. And I forget what it was. It wasn't like, we started off with like heavy sled pushes and like partner like relay stuff. It wasn't that. It was like traditional like conditioning.
Sure.
Everyone on the line, sprint this distance, get back in this time. And we had like, they warmed up, then they did a ton of partner stretching. I'm stretching your leg. And he was like, the strength coach was like, oh yeah, there's gonna be no excuse for like you not making the time. Like, you guys wanna stretch? Oh, like, why didn't we do enough stretching? There's no excuses. We're gonna do a ton of stretching today.
Yeah.
And to your point of stretching beforehand, because the whole don't stretch beforehand, there's a study on dynamic or passive stretching, static stretching, holding a position. I think it was for 2 minutes, and I forget exactly, but it's like hamstring stretch, 2 minutes, then do a vertical jump, and your vertical jump was whatever, a couple % down from what it should have been, what it was if you didn't do the stretch. And then there's studies that have come out. It's like, okay, you can stretch as long as you want, but do it at the beginning, then get active, do dynamic, and then you should be good. But I thought it was funny. He just like, we did the active and dynamic stuff. And it's like, all right, partner stretch, hold 2 minutes or whatever it was. Oh, there's no excuses now. And it's like, yeah, oh well, it's just conditioning.
Yeah. That's, when you really think about it, it makes sense why you don't want too much static stretching before a workout, right? Like, especially if you're running or, sprinting or jumping or doing something that's explosive in nature. It's like, yeah, like you want, you need to have some stiffness in your muscle, to be able to really utilize the stretch shortening cycle, right? So if you get super loose and really like do a lot of static stretching before doing explosive movements, it's like, yeah, your performance is probably going to decrease a little bit. During the baseball season, later in the baseball season, Bilo was telling me that he was talking to Trev, Trev, both those guys, but especially Trev is like very twitchy. He's very like, just, how he is, like just good athlete, but very springy and twitchy. And Bilo was like, yeah, he was telling me how like he feels the fastest when he, like when he's running, like he can almost feel that his hamstrings are like kind of tight, And I was like, yeah, depending on how tight it is, like you don't want to be super loose, because again, you don't really have the rebound in the muscles that you need to do those fast, explosive movements. But it was just funny. He was like, yeah, I've never heard that before. And I was like, Yeah, I mean, he's not necessarily wrong, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of crazy, like 2 weeks after that, he pulled his hamstring in a baseball game. But
In a baseball, what, running
yeah,
bases?
running to first base. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, true.
And I don't know if it was as he got to the plate. So I don't know if he stepped wrong or something.
Reached for
Yeah,
it.
it was something. I don't really know what happened, but anyways, just kind of funny that some kids, you know, are aware of that and kind of feel that, like, yeah, when I feel a little bit, my muscles are a little bit tighter, you know, I feel a little bit faster and twitchier, which makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so dynamic and static stretching, pretty straightforward. Do dynamic beforehand, do static stretching afterwards, right? Pretty straightforward. Next is foam rolling. I mean, people love foam rolling.
People love foam rolling.
You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of good uses for foam rolling. I think a lot of times it's overused, you know what I mean? But I do, like, just specifically what I'm thinking of with using a foam roller, like, we've talked about this a lot, but rolling your calves out before you stretch or before you squat makes a huge difference. A huge difference in most people that do it. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Like, so I tell the kids all the time, like, walking around all day, whenever you jog at practice, whenever you're playing a sport, like, literally every step you take, you're using your calf. And if you don't stretch out your calf muscle, like, you're probably gonna have tight calves. And then trying to get them to understand, you know, the relationship between the mobility, your ankle mobility, and your squat form, you know, is a little bit more difficult. At least it is for me.
Yeah.
But just having them do, okay, I want you to do 20 rolls back and forth on each calf. You know, come back and do a set of squats and see how much further you can get your knee over toe and how much more comfortable you are in the bottom of a squat. Is there anything that you use foam rolling for, like, specifically, or?
No, with draft prep guys, we just do it for, like, the recovery day. I think pre-lift, I think, makes a lot of sense, just to open up range of motion.
Yeah.
Just give you more usable workspace for your squat, or people will certain, like, catching a clean or holding a front squat or something like that. It's like, okay, I can't get in position. I foam roll, now I can get the position. Cool.
Yeah.
There was, man, I forget I think it's Jill something.
Okay.
She's all about mobility and foam rolling, and she referenced a study where foam rolling before the lift, not after the lift, foam rolling before the lift helps with soreness the next day.
Okay.
It's like, huh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I would have never expected that. So, you know, I think using it beforehand, again, just to kind of open up some space so you can do the movement, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. That, similar to how you mentioned, like, that's another one that we'll use with, like, front squats, cleans, like, just your front rack position. You know, especially with kids, like, oh, my wrist, I need to stretch out my wrist. And obviously it's like, got to explain to them, like, okay, we got this big muscle right here, right? The tighter this muscle is, if it connects at the, you know, the upper part of your upper arm, like, if this muscle's super tight, you're only gonna be able to get your elbows up so far, and then in turn, you're gonna feel it in your wrist.
Yeah.
Whereas if you loosen this up, it's gonna help you be able to get your elbows more forward and, like, take stress off your wrists. And, like, kids, like, don't really connect with them until they actually do it. And then they do it and they're like, you know, it hurts, you know, but then they get into it and they're like, oh my God, like, that actually did help, you know? So those would probably be the two most common ones that I at least recommend for kids to do. Rolling out your calves before you squat, and then anything with a front rack position, rolling out your lats goes a long way. Man, I have a foam roller at home that I got from TJ Maxx for like $10, bro. And it's like, I've had it for years now. It's just your normal, flat, black, like, hard foam roller. And I use that, like, in my mobility routine, talking about it. We've talked about this, I think, before, but man, like, it's usually the last thing that I'll do. I'll just, you know, I'll roll my back out, just upper to mid back. I don't know, a lot of kids want to try to roll their lower back out when their lower back hurts. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it. You know, like, the way I tell kids is, like, think about it. Your back is probably sore because you've been in extension all day, right? Like, your lower back is extended. And it's like, yeah, for us to work on the opposite of that, if you want to round it out, you know, that will probably have a better chance of loosening up your lower back by doing that than going into further extension, by using the foam roller and really. So I don't know. They think, oh, if I'm sore, again, it's similar to the stretching, right? If I'm sore, I need to stretch something, or if I'm sore, which again, sometimes you do. But if I have pain, maybe I need to foam roll it out. It's like, depending on where that pain's at. But anyways, I'll use that every night, like roll out my back and then like put it right beneath my shoulder blades, big breath in, and then reach out or try to touch your head to the back of the floor while keeping your hips down. And so you're just kind of, rounded over. Man, that feels.
You crack your sternum?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, but crack my sternum. I'll usually get like 3 or 4 cracks in my back too at the same time, and then you come up, pull your head, and like go the other way. So that feels really good. But foam rolling is good if you don't overdo it, and I think there's a lot of instances where it can definitely help with certain movements and things like that.
Yeah, as long as, I think it's important for people to understand it's not a cure-all. It's not going to fix all your pain. It may be temporarily, but if it's a tool to kind of help get you loose before a lift, to kind of help you hit certain ranges of motion, and then you start warming up, cool. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, which kind of brings us to our next one that we were going to talk about, is just like full range of motion training. What do you think about it?
Love it. I think, man, I've been on a kick, or it's something I've thought about for like probably the last like 5 years.
Yeah.
It was Joel Smith, like Just Fly Sports Performance podcast. I forget who it was, but it was like, man, you should either be lifting full range of motion, like maybe even what people would think is like excessive, like full range of motion, push-ups and dips and all the way down, pull, full range of motion, or like a very specific range of motion. Now that there's definitely cases where you should use partials, and there's uses for all of these methods, but it's like, man, why you should be training full range of motion.
Yeah.
Get the joint to move in its full range of motion in order to maintain that, to get the tissue strong in all those different positions, to maintain the range of motion over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And even, as you were just talking about your foam roll thing, you're not forcing yourself like into a stretch. You can really pull yourself lower into a stretch, or a foam roller you can really press down, or think of like, I don't know what you call them, like soldiers, walking soldiers.
Yeah.
You can like get a ton of momentum so you can get your leg up as high as possible. What you were just describing is just like the laying on the foam roller, stretching the chest, opening up. That's just taking your body through what it's capable of in that moment.
Yeah.
Not forcing it, nothing excessive. It's like, that's full range of motion train. There's no load there.
Sure, yeah.
But you're just taking your body through what it already has.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, I think a lot of time, pretty much with all, full range of motion training, same thing with the foam roller, at least for the T-spine, it's like you have like gravity helping you out. You know what I mean? Like it's, even if you don't have any load, like talking about that, right?
Yep.
Gravity is pulling you down towards the ground. Same thing like if you do, probably like, I really don't lift heavy anymore, really ever. But like my favorite squat variation is just like a low, deep squat with a pause at the bottom, you know? Just cause it feels awesome on my hips, my knees, my ankles, just to be able to just feel, again, doesn't take much load. But in all of that stuff you're doing, even with the dips and the push-ups, it's like, gravity is helping you get into that, that full range of motion, if you will. And so it's like, you can't really, I guess you could overdo it, but as long as you're smart about the load.
I was just thinking, as you were talking, I was like, I was going to ask, like, if you think people can overdo it.
Yeah.
Because I don't really think, there's always exceptions to it, as you kind of went through that battle in your head too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can for the most part, your body is meant to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't even know where you were going with that thought, so sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But like, I'm going to a family get together later.
Yeah.
So I'm already thinking of one family member talking to her child. She was sitting in a deep squat. You know how kids can just sit in a deep squat. It's crazy. and the mom oh, that's gonna be so bad for your knees. It's like, are you kidding? That's probably the best thing she could ever do for her knees.
Yeah.
Or like little kids can sit and like sitting on the floor in like funky positions with their hips.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, that's just killing her knees. It's like, one, that's her hip that's twisting, not her knee.
Yeah.
Her knee can't. And two, it's probably amazing for her body.
Yeah, for sure.
It can do that position, so she should continue to do it, or you'll lose it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, just thinking of conversation topics for my family later.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny because I feel like a lot of people have a misconception about certain different movements, like, still letting the knee go over the toe when you squat.
That's still a thing.
Or when you lunge, it's like, oh, don't do that. That's a bad thing. And it's like, not really. As long as you progress in and do it right.
Yeah.
Like.
Can't jump into putting 300 pounds on your back into like that knees over toe crazy split. Okay, that's gonna cause some problems.
Yeah.
You're not prepared for it.
Well, and I feel like most full range of motion training per se is done with some type of tempo prescribed. Whether it's a pause or whether it's a eccentric tempo or whatever it is. So I think that also is a good way to prevent people from overdoing it, right? So it's usually not super fast and explosive movements when you're doing full range of motion training.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be, but usually it's, you'll pause at the bottom just to feel a good stretch, or you'll go super slow on the eccentric portion just to kind of, for whatever reason, work on that negative aspect of it. But yeah, it's hard to overdo as long as you're smart about it, And again, I think it's kind of like you were saying earlier, like all the benefits you mentioned in terms of like having that joint move in its full range of motion and getting a good stretch at the bottom. I think at the same time, I think the more range of motion you use, the more muscle fibers you're recruiting, and that in turn helps with muscle growth, you know?
Yes.
So
100%.
like, especially with kids, I think it's very important to, sometimes I'll have people ask why when we hang clean, why we go into a full squat with it, and it's like, well, there's a lot of different reasons for it. Not a lot, but multiple different reasons for it. But one of them is to just stay comfortable in that bottom position, kind of working in that full range of motion. So it sounds like we're both big fans of it.
Yes.
And I think kind of like you mentioned earlier, you can hit multiple different benefits of it by doing that one thing.
Yeah. No, I think that is the way to go.
Yeah.
And thinking of like the fast explosive movements from a full, like think of a dip where you're all the way in there and like doing it fast. Seems kind of crazy, but like you're in a huge stretch position, you're in a vulnerable position with the shoulder, like doing that in a fast explosive manner, that's kind of dangerous if you're not prepared for it. I think if you build up to it, I think you could actually be okay.
Just like anything else, right?
Simple progression. Simple progression.
Not rushing into anything. So
okay,
those are all good. And then the last one that we have is just ISOs. What are your thoughts on it? What are some like different ISOs that you like, if you have any, like for stretching, and kind of how do you utilize it?
I love them. Right next to full range of motion training. I think if you're looking specifically to increase range of motion, I think isometrics are the way. Okay. That, or something I've been playing around with a little bit, is like slow eccentrics, but not like 5 seconds down, like 2 minutes down.
Yeah.
I did that with an RDL, and I was like almost like head to knees.
2 minutes?
Yes.
Damn.
I know. It's ridiculous, and you're shaking and with like nothing on the bar. But it's crazy once your brain, something I fully believe, once your brain trusts you in a range of motion, like it just gives you more and more.
Yeah.
So I think isometrics are a good way to just show your brain that I'm strong here. So one example, maybe you've seen this, maybe not. Runners, like distance runners, your cross country, your milers. I feel like those are, not that I work with a ton of them, but like the common people that are like, oh, my hips, or like, oh, I can't touch my toes. We do like these toe touch things in the warm up every day. And it's always like the people who do cross country that really, really struggle with it. There's other people, but it's just something that always catches my eye. But like a runner, they obviously cross country run, not sprinter. They don't get their knee up very high. They don't get a lot of range of motion at the hip. It's not that they have a lot of muscle mass, typically don't at all, but they go through this motion running where they lift their hip up, I don't know, not very high, over and over and over and over and over again for an hour on a however many mile run. That's where their body's so comfortable producing force. That's the range of motion they hit so many times and produce force from that position over and over again. It's like, no wonder you struggle with full range of motion move. Your body doesn't experience it. Your body doesn't produce force from that position. You're not strong in that position. Your body's not safe in that position. It's not, you have big, tight muscles. You don't really have a whole lot of muscle. But as soon as you get people to produce force, show the brain, hey, I'm strong and safe in this position, I can generate force in this position, things just open up. Anyway, so I think that's just, isometrics is just a concept. You can do it in any position. So for me, with one thing, it's left shoulder, like flexion, overhead position. I can just lay on the ground, or I can do it up against a wall, just pushing into the wall and pulling back as far as I can. Repeated, not anything fast, like 5-second push, 5-second pull. That's typically my go-to, is that time frame. I think the research is like 6 seconds is optimal, but no one's come to 6. So I always do 5 push, 5 pull, 5 reps. Just easy. That's for me personally. With people with knee pain, we'll do like the couch stretch. You're doing 5-second push into the bench, 5-second where you're trying to like lift your foot off the bench, which you'll probably, a lot of people cramp from. 5 up, 5 down, 5 reps. I've done it myself for knee pain, for like tendonitis. A lot of times for hamstring, just any position you want. Any position you want to improve range of motion or you feel tight. And it doesn't have to be 5 up, 5 down. It could be 5 seconds where you're contracting the lengthened muscle. You're pushing down, you're trying to get into a deeper stretch, but you're making the muscle produce force. And you watch range of motion just open up. So.
Yeah, I think that's an important kind of distinction, is when you talk about ISOs, and I really don't use them much, but when you talk about ISOs for mobility, it's not the same as static stretching. You know what I mean? I feel some people might get those mixed up, where it's like, yeah, you're holding a position in an ISO, but it's, no, you actually have to contract and relax the muscle that you're trying to stretch, which is the difference, obviously, between static and an ISO stretch, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, that's all good stuff. Like I said, I rarely ever use them. You know, I did use them a little bit when I was in St. Louis, like working as a trainer. I remember like I'd work with some older people, and the best part of the workout was like I got it from another guy that was there, but we would do like a partner stretch at the end. And most of the times it was with, you know, you use a foam roller, and this actually feels pretty good. Use a foam roller where, like, if I'm the one that's stretching, I'll sit on like a table or a bench or something. Person will stand behind me with a foam roller and like put their knees against the foam roller, so it's right up against my spine. Right, and then they'll push one shoulder down, you look that way. Push one shoulder down, you look this way, and you can do, you know, like pull them back against, like those, and just simple like partner stretches from there, like a hamstring stretch or like a glute med stretch where you take it over, or, you know, any of those. And they would love that, you know, because they would just feel so good, especially, obviously they just got done working out, but feel so good after a stretch like that. You know, I think there's a lot of benefit to that, you know, just in the sense of using those after a workout. Do you ever use those beforehand? ISOs?
ISOs?
Yeah.
Not really. Me personally, I would use it during the workout.
Yeah.
As like, we just talked about foam roller to improve range of motion that you can use in your lift. I would do like during my warm-up sets, I might squat, for example. You could foam roll the calves, or I could hit like the bar for 10 reps, then go on a slant board, do some calf stuff.
Yeah.
Then come back and use a little bit heavier weight, just incorporate it into my warm-up.
Yep.
Typically, I do it on like a standalone session.
Okay.
You could probably use it at the end,
Yeah.
but it's not as clearly not as relaxing as like a passive stretch or a partner stretch, where you can control the range of motion. Obviously, you can with ISOs as well, but passive stretch is relaxing. It's parasympathetic. It's rest and digest. It's getting your heart rate to calm down. It's relaxing. Isometrics are not.
Yeah.
So I typically don't do them. I typically will do it as part of my warm up or a standalone thing.
I gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I think from there, just like the next thing really to talk about is just like practical applications, right? Like how, and we already did a little bit, but I don't know, I guess just in terms of like when we train, and again, I usually work with bigger groups, right? 40 to 50, sometimes a lot more than that, but
Crazy.
Yeah, but it's
We're
like
on such opposite ends of the spectrum with that.
Yeah, we really are, which is, I mean, it's good. It gives us two different kind of perspectives, you know. But like a lot of the stuff I do, especially with high schoolers, is like, is just trying, don't need to do anything too complicated or too specific to what we're doing. It's like, okay, I need something that everybody's going to be able to do, So we keep it pretty simple with our warm-ups. Actually, I can't remember if it was I think it was this past school year, I changed kind of how we warmed up a little bit. Usually for the first 3 years, we would do it back here on the turf, and we would have, we'd get like 3 lines down there. And then it's like, okay, go through like your normal, lunge with a twist and sweeps and quad pulls. But then it's like, man, you got 45, 50 kids in a class, and you got 3 people working at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we would get 3 or 4 stretches in, and then that would be our full time for our warm up.
Yeah.
So anyways, this past year we did it where like we would all line up along the turf. So like face a partner, we're all working together, we're all resting together.
Okay.
So then it's like, I would just do it all time based. So we would start with something that would get your heart rate up. So high knees, jumping jacks, burpees, something like that, right? And then depending on what we were doing that day, we would work in just some 2 to 4 stretches, like, or movement, not even stretches, but movements or exercises that, will help you in that. So if it's a bench press day, like we always would do like shoulder circles. So forward, backwards, cross body, 1 up, 1 down, and then some type of twist. Same thing on a bench press day, we do pretty much every day that we bench press, we'll do like a push up with a downward dog, which is, mobility-ish. I mean, there's a little bit of muscle working too, obviously. But just make it kind of a little bit more specific towards what we're doing that day, and it's really not super complicated at all. I know you guys have at PSM at the field house, you guys have like a bunch of different warm-ups, right? Like that you run through. Do you usually do the same-ish type of thing, or does it depend on what they're doing that day, or how do you go about it?
The warm-ups, they're created by Scott.
Okay.
And it's nice. He just has like a database of here's running warm-ups, so like using turf or a basketball court to actually move around. Then there's like mobility flow, where you just need like enough space for yourself. You might do some stuff on the ground. Line drill warm-ups.
Yeah.
There's a hurdle warm-up. There's a band walk warm. He's got a ton of options.
Yeah.
The overwhelming majority of our warm-ups are the running warm-ups. And those are progressed. So it's not necessarily, hey, today's a sprint day, we do this warm-up. Hey, today's a change of direction day, we do this warm-up. Oh, you're just coming to lift. Okay, do this warm-up. Not with the running warm-ups necessarily, but it's more of, okay, here's running 1. Any unskilled, anyone within reason, athlete-wise, could do it.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. It's going to get your heart rate up. You're going to hit lots of ranges of motion, different positions. There's stretches always in there. There's running 2 where it's a little progression.
Sure.
And then you go to running 6 and it's like, oh, there's like a good amount of harder single leg plyometrics in that. But you wouldn't start with that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it's tiered out. So if it's just me, which it's typically not, as a coach there, I got 5 people. I'm just kind of, all right, we got a limiting factor here with this guy. It's not that running 1 is easy. Running 1 might be the most fatiguing.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of back and forth. So he or she's the limiting factor. We got to do running 1. Everyone's going to get something out of it. It's just not as challenging from a skill perspective. Sure. If we have multiple coaches, we start splitting people up. All right, these 2 are doing that harder one. This is their first day. They're doing this. These intermediate people, I got them for this. So, yeah, we just kind of split them up in that way.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, so that's post, obviously. I see a lot of people talking about how, how it's, there's a lot of benefit to, having a lot of variation in your warm-up, which I agree with 100%. I think a lot of times it gets monotonous, especially if you're doing the same stuff over and over. Again, depending on your time limitations and your size limitations, I think there's a lot of benefit to putting a lot of variability into the warm-up, which we really don't do much of, just because, again, time and just skill difference between the big groups that we have. Yeah. But I do at least every summer, I try to add in, 2 to 4 different movements that will like challenge the kids. So like we did I don't know what you call it, but this summer, we did I call it like a 1-4 full leg cycle, where you like basically call it, or you take 4 steps, and on the 4th step you full leg cycle the right leg through.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Like a sprint cycle.
Yeah. And so, I had done them in grad school before, and I hadn't done them in a while. But it kind of reminded when you were going over, when we were at, I think it was our last pep rally, when you did that walkthrough. And
is this, sorry to cut you off, is this like you're kind of bouncing into it? And okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what, that's good, because a lot of our kids, especially working on top end speed stuff, they struggle with just the full leg cycle aspect, where heel to butt, step over the opposite side knee and pull yourself through. So I was like, I had to refresh myself on it and make sure I could do it. And then I was like, I don't know how these kids are going to do with it. But honestly, after like the first week or so, like most of them picked it up pretty well.
That's cool.
You know?
That's fun.
But like challenging movements like that, where it's like, that's not easy to do. You need a good amount of coordination and rhythm to be able to do that. Same thing, we call it like, similar to what you showed in the pep rally, I call it like a knee split plyo. So like we take 3 hops. On the 3rd jump, like ankle hops, right? So feet together. On the 3rd hop, you jump as high as you can. You just focus on your knee separation, right? Driving one knee up and then alternate to the opposite leg on the next 3 hops. But like, again, that, you need rhythm and a little bit of bounce to be able to figure out how to do that. So I try to, every summer is really when I do it. I'm like, okay, like I'll incorporate into my warm-ups the month or 2 before the summer starts. Like, okay, what are things that I think we struggle with? And what are things that I think we could do more of, you know? And so those are just like 2 common examples, or examples from this year that I added in. But really in class, our warm-ups, we have, 10 to 12 different movements that I pick and choose from depending on what we're doing that day. And then to get into post-training, in class, we don't do any post-training stretching because it's time, right? We're out of time when we're done lifting. But like, I'm sure you remember it, like, Snyder football has been doing the same static stretch at the end of each workout, at the end of each practice. I forget who I was talking to about this. It was one of the other football coaches. I was like, I thought about like maybe trying to change it up, because a lot of time, again, if you do the same stretch every day, especially as a high schooler, like by the 2nd, 3rd, 4th week, like, unless we're on your ass, like you're really not probably stretching
checked
much.
out.
Yeah, you're just really just going through the motions. So it's like, maybe changing that up might be a little bit, might be a good idea. But then it's also like, man, that's like a tradition. I don't know how long that's been going on.
It's straight down.
So feet together, straight down.
I gotta remember it.
Yep.
Then crossover.
Yep. Right over left.
Left over right.
Left over right.
Feet wide.
Yep. Spread them.
middle, left, right,
Yep.
or whatever order, and then stay in the wide position, but you're like squatted down.
Yeah,
I don't
like
know how to
inside to the right, inside to the left.
And then was there an inside to the middle?
Yeah, like
Because I remember we'd always try to like handstand kind of.
Yeah.
Is that it?
And then you go right quad.
Um,
Where that's where everybody's balancing on each other.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right quad, left quad, arm across, both arms across, both arms back
Behind.
behind. Yeah.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah. So it's like, it's crazy because it's like, that's probably been going on for 40 plus years, So I'm like, I've gone back and forth. I haven't changed it. I've gone back and forth on it. But I'm like, man, like that's a tradition. Sure, we might not be getting the best stretch out of it. But it's also like, it's funny every year that we see, like in the spring when the current juniors are going to be the seniors. Like when we end our off-season lifts, we'll have, all the upcoming seniors up front. And it's like, man, these kids are geeked to like count out one of these stretches. You know what I mean? Because they've been, if you play all 4 years, like you've seen 3 groups of seniors go through and like call out and just be a leader and, in a sense, and lead these stretches that like people are excited about it, which doesn't mean I still can't change it. But I don't know. I haven't made a decision on it, but it's funny because like I said, we've been doing, Snyder football has been doing that for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, most of them, if you do it right, like you should get a pretty good stretch. It might not be the best in the world, but
good general stretch. Yeah.
And so we'll do that after our summer training. Do you guys have any like post-training work that you do?
For the youth edge athletes that we work with, no.
Yeah.
No. With draft prep, we wouldn't do any stretches post, but I'm all for it. It makes sense. And I think of it more as a cool down.
Yeah.
Like, especially a passive stretch, like you're really not solidifying a range of motion. You're not producing force in it. You're not bulletproofing yourself. But I think like a stretch post-workout is perfectly good. We would just do like a legs up on a bench, parasympathetic breathing.
Yeah.
Kind of same from a nervous system standpoint, same concept, just no stretch.
Yeah, slow the heart rate down.
Yep. I tell them they should be falling asleep.
Yeah.
If you yawn, you get bonus points, things like that.
Yeah, that's outside of what we do in the summer. We really don't do much post-training stretching, but
it's hard with your time constraints in class. And me, like, everyone will warm up together for the most part, 98, 99% of the time. Everyone warms up together. Let's say we're sprinting, everyone will sprint together. Then some kids are going to go do plyos. Some people are going to go lift. They all have their own lifting sheet. They're all going to finish at different times. So it's not like a big group cool down or post stretch. It's kind of everyone's in their own spot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's definitely benefit to it, but again,
yes, I agree.
I think something kind of related to that, and we talked about this a little bit earlier off camera, but we've had a few kids, especially recently, that I guess to take a step back, we've probably mentioned this on another podcast. It was probably the one where we went over like the high school program that we run through.
Yeah.
But Fridays a lot of the time, especially in the fall, Friday is like treated as a mobility day. So more often than not, we'll take them up to the wrestling room. Obviously, mats everywhere. You take shoes off, more comfortable than laying on the turf, right? And I'll just do 15, 20-minute like full body stretch. I used to, like my first 2 years, my first year at Garrett, my first year here, I would like plan it out, like, okay, I want to do this, this, and this. But like past couple of years, I'll just kind of free ball it, just kind of like whatever. There's always certain ones that will always hit, like the world's greatest stretch, right? Like kids love that stretch. I do too. It's great.
Called it for a reason.
Man, literally, it feels amazing. So we'll do a couple different variations of that. And there's a handful of other ones that we pretty much will do every week. But then, sometimes it's like ask the kids what they want, where do you feel it? What do you want to stretch out? And things like that. But we focus a lot on the mobility aspect, and I wasn't really sure what it was going to turn into, but like it turned into, kids love the stretches on Fridays, especially if they're really truly like working hard. By the end of the week, like we got, 1 sprint speed day, 3 lift days, and then if you're practicing every day, so it's like on Friday, if you're in season or preseason, really if you're training and or practicing, and you're not sore and tight by Friday, by the end of the week, like, yeah, you're probably not, fully exerting yourself, So a lot of the kids, like, we'll have in the spring, Coach Tittman will do like a talk, every other Friday.
I've heard about these.
Yeah, tip talks. And so like kids will ask me like, Wednesday and Thursday, oh, what are we doing Friday? And be like, oh, we either got to clean the weight room or, got a tip talk this Friday. And they're like, oh, when are you going to stretch, man? We haven't stretched in 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. And so it is kind of cool to see them. That's like, yeah, I need that stretch, like I'm going to need that stretch for them to connect, like just a 15-minute full body stretch and how much better it makes them feel.
Nice.
Man, it just makes a big difference. But I say all that to say I've had a few kids that have that I've talked to them one-on-one that are like, yeah, like I have like something that I do before bed every night, kind of like we were talking earlier, like 5-10 minute thing where it's like, yeah, it helps me just kind of relax and
I think it's
awesome. Yeah, it just helps me just feel better, much better the next day. It's something I've tried to get BP to do, especially with his hips. I'm like, bro, I can give you a 5-minute routine that if you do it every day after a couple weeks, you're gonna feel so much better.
Because he had one labral surgery or two.
Yeah, I think just one. Yeah, but his hips are always tight. So something like that. I think if you can find something that again makes your body feels good, and something that you can be consistent with, that, man, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, that's really like the mobility stuff that we do, at least for us, is that's pretty much what it is. Those Fridays we'll do a decent amount of mobility, and then just outside of that, in the summer, we stretch every day afterwards. But outside of that, it's pretty straightforward. So
yeah.
I don't know, you got anything else on it?
No, a decent amount of mobility for the edge in the warm up. Then, man, train full range of motion, and you're probably good.
Yeah.
There's going to be some little things here and there. My this hurts, my that hurts from life or from the workout or from sport.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if you're just hitting different ranges of motion in the warm up, like you talked about, and then you train full range of motion in your lift, you're going to be good.
Yeah.
You check a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One thing I forgot to mention was a lot of the mobility stuff that I get. I'm a huge fan of yoga. Lots of different types of yoga, right? But huge fan of yoga. A lot of the mobility stuff that we do kind of has some type of roots back towards like stuff that I've done in yoga. And most of the yoga that I've done is just like off of YouTube. You know what I mean? I've done like in-person classes too, but most of the time it's like that used to be my Friday thing. Like every Friday my workout would be like a 45-minute like yoga video where you get a lot of different positions and a lot of different stretches that you normally wouldn't get into in a traditional strength conditioning or athletic performance. So I think that's another thing that people should look into. I encourage our kids all the time. So, we're ending our first week off in the summer, and talking to them before they left on last Friday, it's like, you don't have to do anything crazy, but you should still stay active. You know, take a walk or go play some casual hoops, or a bike ride, or I was like, and that was one of the things I brought up. Like, if you go on YouTube and search yoga for athletes, or yoga recovery for athletes, like there's tons of videos that you can find on there, all different types of lengths, 10 minutes to an hour, that you go on there and you do that. Yeah, it might be a little bit challenging for you, especially if you don't really stretch like that, like yoga wise. But like, man, afterwards you're gonna feel incredible. So I think there's something to be said about just the practice of yoga. And I've heard about it for years now, of like, NFL guys like doing yoga in the off season, or even Pilates, like doing different types of stuff that you normally wouldn't think of NFL athletes doing, but like, that's probably more challenging than most of the, some of the other stuff they do, just because they're not used to moving like that.
Yeah. There was my old job, Bomberitos, Pete is big on having like some affiliation with a Pilates studio.
Okay.
And it looks like they got a good one either this year or the past 2-3 years with this one studio, and like the coaches go.
Really?
And participate themselves. I always see like Marco and Martira, and Bethany's a physical, she doesn't work there anymore, but she's a physical therapist. And they post themselves there, like doing it. And like you just see these big ass football players with them too. And there's a whole like news article or something that I saw recently about, however many NFL players doing Pilates with this lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's different. It's challenging. They're not used to it. And like just stability and training the body in different positions.
Yeah, for sure. It goes a long way.
Yeah.
Especially for someone, like at that level in the NFL or playing professional sports. It's like, yeah, man, you've been training the majority of your life, but you get put in, a certain position, whether it's in a Pilates class or a yoga class, and it's like, you don't know what's going on. It's just like any novel thing that you're not used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a big belief that yoga is just like, breathe in and breathe out and just relax, which there are a lot of yoga classes that do that. But there are a lot of other yoga classes that, 40, 50-year-old men and women will go in there and kill it.
Yeah.
And like guys like me and you that are a little bit younger and
Dang.
a little bit younger and relatively active will go in there and like be in there dripping sweat and shaking and they're over there just relaxed, so it's just the novelty of it, of having something new. But I think another thing that is related to yoga that I think really goes a long way in mobility work is moving with your breath. You know what I mean? That's a big thing in yoga. And yeah, we probably did talk about it on a different
No, I don't think so.
Or was it just...
Yeah, just me and you.
But it's just like, yeah, I mean, that's, I've heard true yogis, like people that actually that live that life say that, it's not yoga unless you are moving with your breath. The breath is what really kind of ties everything together. And there's some type of like mindfulness application to that as well. But strictly just speaking of like the physical aspect of it, like same thing like the example with the foam roller where you breathe in and big breath, and as you reach, like breathe out, right? Like a lot of times I feel like it's as you get deeper into the stretch you want to exhale, which is obviously more parasympathetic and kind of helps you relax into that stretch a little bit. And then as you go the opposite way of whatever yoga flow you're doing, like you'll breathe in. And if you've never actually tried to do that, like connect your breath to your movement, like it's a lot harder than it sounds. But once you, like, if you're able to get into a routine and get it down and find your rhythm with it, like, man, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I bet.
Makes a big difference. But that's another thing just related to the yoga that I think paying attention to what your breath is doing and trying to move with and not against your breath, I think goes a long way in helping you get further into a stretch and just feeling better at the end of it too. So I don't know, I think that's pretty good, just kind of mobility overview of different ways that you can do things and when to do it, how often to do it, different ideas of things to try, and just the importance of staying mobile. But also not overdoing it, not doing it too much. You want still a little bit of stiffness in the muscle and things like that, at least pre-training.
Yep. So, just a timing thing.
Yeah. You got anything else you think?
No, I think we covered it all.
Yeah, I think that's good. We'll keep knocking these out and keep working on our other stuff too.
More stuff coming.
Yeah, we got some good stuff coming. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.